Hello dear ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Buyers Games. I'm your host Skyquake as always, and today we're back into some Wargame Red Dragon deck building tutorials. Last episode we were looking at the US Armored, and today we're going to be looking at the Red 4 side of things with the USSR.
Around here.
Armored. So a little bit of a contrast so we can get the two main superpowers and see how they differ in vehicles, tactics, and strategy as you will encounter them in Wargame Red Dragon. So as you can see, we've got the deck creation already loaded up here with the Red 4, USSR, and Armored type. However, we're not going to go with any eras. The era stuff I will get to in my more advanced videos, but for the course of this tutorial series, we're just going to be looking at the mainstay ones with the latest equipment that you can get. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. So, as with all things, in my previous video with the US Armored, logistics was a very key part because of the way that the US equipment is structured and how fuel heavy and gas guzzling they are with the free rooms. So the Russians are not like that. So the Russian equipment, of course, logistics is a very important part for every country that you have in the game, but Russia doesn't require or rely that heavily on fuel in terms of like range to attack on the bigger maps as, say, for example, the US does. And there's several different tactical strategical differences between the nations, so between the US and Red 4, which we will dive into in this game, and it's reflected into Wargame Red Dragon to a certain extent. So let's get into logistics as always. Similarly to the US Armored deck, you've got four main CV types or vehicles that you can get for the USSR Armored. So, firstly, in the cheapest that you can get is their equivalent of a Jeep, which is the UAZ-469U. This is the cheapest one at 100 points. You can get 7 of them with the trained specialty. And you can get the BMP-1K, which is a decent mid-range price as well as vehicle in terms of capabilities. Pretty decent if you want to be able to soak up a little bit more damage or have it a bit more protected. Then next up you've got the T-71K1, which is the tank version of the CV, one of the tank versions of the CVs. This one is great if you want to be stuck up straight up on the front lines, if you got a really difficult position you need to hold and you don't want your CV just to get sniped instantly by artillery. Tank CVs are a good option for this. However, there are drawbacks to them, which I will get into a moment. And then last but definitely not least, you have the T-80UK, which is just a beast of a vehicle, and in my opinion, a very sexy tank, I'm not gonna lie. But it's got the reflex missile that you can fire from the gun. You got the 2A46 and 125mm gun. It's got great armor, really good. Same as with T-70K1. Perfect for those frontline control zones that you need to capture and make sure that it holds and doesn't get easily taken out by artillery or whatever the case may be. The drawbacks, however, are the following. With big expensive CV tanks comes A, the price, and B, the amount you can bring in. As you can see with the T-80UK, on Hardened you can only bring in 2 of them, and on Elite only 1 of them. So although it's a very effective way, and a lot of the people that I play with do use command tanks to great effect, there are downsides to this. As I've mentioned, in the case of a frontline position that you hold, and this place the CV needs to hold this place as long as possible, not be taken out by most of the stuff that it can be taken out that other CVs would be. For example, artillery, rocket launchers, all that kind of stuff. The 80 UK is a great option for this. However, in terms of that, you can only bring in 2. So if it gets knocked out or the enemy spots it and then decides to throw the kitchen sink at it, it will die eventually. And you can only bring 2 of them out, so if you bring 2 of them out, if you have those 2 deployed, then you have those 2 deployed. You can't bring anything more, and for each one that you lose, it's a massive loss for you. So that means you have to then sacrifice supplies, for example, in terms of getting another CV type, if you need to do that. Which is an option, and I've seen Wargame players do that, but for newcomers and beginners, I would not recommend this tactic. It's expensive, and the risks most of the time outweigh the rewards. In my general experience, I usually go with the UAZ-469U. and the BMP-1K as two alternative options, depending on the environment, map, and or players that I play against. Because that's a big factor in Wargame Red Dragon. A lot of even experienced and veteran players overlook is the players that you fight against. Because you have to not only know what country they're playing as and counter their country, but also know the play style of how they play. So that's a very important tip of the day that I would say that you need to keep out for. In this tutorial video, we're going to be taking the UAZ 469U. At 7 of them, they're cheap, you can get them out, and in terms of game modes such as this Conquest, where you have to capture as many points as possible, it's cheap enough so you can bring out more if one or two get lost, plus you can get more out at the start, you can get more control points under your command, which means you have a bit of a leg up in later game. So definitely going with the UAZ. And just as a general standard rule of thumb, in all of my decks that you'll see in this build, I will be going with 2 fobs. There are very particular circumstances that I wouldn't go with that, or just with 1 fob, such as for example going with 2 CVs. But for this tutorial series, doesn't matter which country, take 2 fobs. It's 16,000 liters per fob, and it's such a very important thing to have as much logistics as you can. On the supply vehicle side of things, however, you've got also 4 options. You've got the MTP-LB, which is a troop transport that's converted into a supply carrier, as you can see with the 2 oil drums in the back. It's got decent speed, it's amphibious, which if you're doing like a very big, heavy, how should I say, naval map, or there's a lot of water, rivers that you need to cross, and you want to do some flanking maneuvers, this is not a bad option to use as to kind of like fuel your amphibious vehicles and stuff all the way if it's a big map, for example. I don't usually go with it, but I might actually try it at one point for that. I haven't really thought of it in a while like that. But that is definitely an option that you can go with. But for this tutorial video, we're not going to be taking MTP-LB. Purely because the supply is horrible at 500 liters. We're not going to go with that. Next up, we've got the MI6, and this is an amazing vehicle to have. The MI6 is great. You can only get 3 of them, but they each carry 3,700 liters, which is massive. And if you're playing those big 2v2, 3v3, or 4v4 maps, this guy is super critical and important to get supplies to the front lines as quickly as possible, get them repaired, rearmed, refueled, all of the things, and keep the war machine going. So we're just going to grab this one straight from the gate because it's really effective. And also another application for it, because it has so much supply, if you have, for example, mortars or artillery systems not near your fobs and you need to resupply them quickly, this guy can go out, land near them, and they can supply your artillery systems for a decent amount of time at least before they need to come back and rearm and refuel at the fob themselves. So definitely a very good option for any USSR Armored Deck. Last but certainly not least, the 2 workhorses of the Soviet Union. You've got the Ural 375D cargo and the Ural 4320. Now, they're 15 and 20 points each, depending on the one you want to go with. They've got basically the same stats in every regard. It's just basically the Ural 4320 is a slightly better one, and its carry capacity of 1,100 liters is slightly higher than the Ural 375D cargo, which has 800 liters. So we're going to go with the Euro 4320, get 9 of them, which is a decent amount, and for 1100 liters, that's 9,900 liters just from the cargo trucks that you get, and another just over 10-ish, 11,000-ish supplies that you get from MI6s. So overall, this is a very good loadout for capturing points, but also having enough supplies to fuel your war machine for the entirety of the match, most of the time. Now we're going to be doing infantry. So Russian infantry is actually pretty decent. It's not the best, but it's also not the worst. So in my personal opinion, I feel like the average Motostrelki squad or whatever is a bit better than the average rifleman squad of the US Armored Deck that I showed earlier. With exceptions, for example, of the US with the Marines and stuff like that. But for general purpose, USS Armored, the Motostrelki I have experienced is a little bit better if you use them correctly than a US rifleman. If you don't like that, that's unfortunately how the game is written, and that's my own humble opinion on the matter. I could be wrong, but that is how I experienced it. Now for these, you get a wide array of vehicles that can transport these guys, everything from the MTLBV that we saw earlier to the BMP-1, to the BMP-1P, BMP-1D, BMP-2. All of these have their various quirks. The weapons that they use is roughly the same, doesn't matter which one you go with. The plain Motostrelki gets the RPG-7, the base RPG-7, which has a better range than the Motostrelki 90, which I find interesting. But its AP power is only 14. So, to put that in perspective, a Leopard 2 has about an armor of 15 or 16, or US Abrams is about 15, 16 as well. So it's going to need a couple of RPG-7s to be able to knock out those guys. So although it's better range, its accuracy is not bad, the AP power is abysmal in terms of taking out those bigger tanks, those stronger tanks. But it's also an option if you're going for a mechanized or motorized group. For the purpose of this one, however, we're going to be going with the Motostrelki 90. As you can see, accuracy of 50%. Only 525 millimeter range for the RPG-7 VR, but it's got an AP power of 24, so that's 10 better, which means it can punch out any heavy tank, M1A2s, T90s, whatever you might encounter, this RPG unit will be able to take it out. So we're going to go with that. We're going to get 3 squads of that. Actually, we're going to get 2. We're going to get 2 of those, because the BMP-2 is a fabulous vehicle. It's got a 30mm cannon, which is very effective against soft-skin vehicles and infantry. It just shreds through them, honestly. And then you've got 4 Conquerors missiles, Sakalos missiles. Very good range, decent accuracy, 20 AP power, can take out most tanks with a good hit. So we're going to go with that, but then to spice it a little bit up, we're going to be going with the Motostrelki 90 with the BMP-3. The BMP-3 is just the more modern version. At this point, it's a prototype, I believe. No, it's not a prototype here. Okay, excellent. So it's also amphibious. It's got good autonomy, good fuel, good road speed, all of that. It gets the Archon missile system, so that's 6 SAL missiles at 2800 meter range, 50% accuracy, 21 AP power, so only one better than the BMP-2's missile system, but that accuracy, and it can be fired on the move, which is so nice. Then you've got the 2A70 100mm main gun. Now, fair enough, it can only fire HE, and doesn't have the best stabilizer, but it is an HE 100mm round. So this guy in a forest line protecting your infantry or providing fire support against soft-skin vehicles is deadly. And then we've got the same 30mm cannon that the BMP-2 does. So this is a very good all-round vehicle, and used in like shock offenses, or if you really want to get a good amount of firepower on a single position. You bring up a couple of Motostrelki squads with this guy. BMP-3 with the SAL missiles can take out most of the tanks, so it's a very good all-in-one platform system. Fair enough, it is a one-hit wonder as well. It can be taken easy as well, but if you use it correctly, the BMP-3 can be a very big lifesaver in tough situations. After that, we're going to be looking at ATGM teams. So you've got 3, you've got the Factoria, you've got the Conquerors, and the Conquerors-M. The Factoria is the cheapest one you can get. It's got the crappiest accuracy, AP power, you name it, and range. Conquerors, the mid-tier one, as we saw, it's the same one as on the BMP-2. And then you've got the Conquerors-M, which has the same range, but better accuracy and an AP power 23. So that's better than even the one on the BMP-3. So we're going to go with this one. You get 7 of them, which is very decent for an amount of ATGM you can get for 1 card. Oh, I didn't actually get the BMP-3 now that I spotted that. Let's get that. I usually go with this one. These are perfect if you want to like sit them a little bit back or in chokehold positions in towns or stuff like that. They just can shred through vehicles so quickly. And we're going to go with card there. Next up, you've got your Igla teams, and you've got your Saperi, which is your Flamethrower squads. And this one actually comes with the BTRT, which is like the prototype Terminator style vehicles, which are pretty fun to play with, especially in forested areas. These guys can become really deadly if they want to be, but for the purposes of this, we're just going to be sticking with what is tried and tested, works good for most combat operations. So you've got the Igla, and you've got the Igla-N and the Strela 3. These are your 3 different anti-aircraft infantry that you get with your man-pads. For the purposes of this, we're going to be going with the Igla-N. It's the newer version of the Igla. It's got 55% accuracy, decent range against helicopters and airplanes. I believe it's not as good as a Stinger, for example, or it's roughly the same, but it's very good. And if you get a couple of these in a building or in a forest line and an enemy doesn't suspect it and flies over, they're going to have a bad time. So we're going to grab those. And now onto the next for support. So, on the support tab, Russia loves its anti-aircraft and artillery systems. So you have a plethora of vehicles to choose from here. So you've got all of your different calibers and variants of the 152 artillery pieces. You've got your 18-inch, 203mm long-range boys, big boys. You've got your SAM systems, and there's so many to choose from. Even got a Buratino, which we like to in the community call the burrito. It just rhymes. It's basically a flamethrower rocket launch. So it shoots 220mm rockets, 30 of them, napalm. Its range is not great. It's really not great, but it's pretty to look at. And if you target it down this thing, it's quite deadly as well. So first things first, however, we're going to be looking at some AA. And short to medium range, we're going to be going with the Beryusa, the ZSU-23-4MZ Beryusa. So this is basically the predecessor to the Tunguska, which we will all be looking at in a moment. It's got radar-guided 23mm cannons. It's got a very good range against helicopters and airplanes, decent accuracy, and a decent stabilizer for an AA system from 1973. So the reason why I'm going with this one and not just going full on Tunguska mode is the fact you get 9 of them, and they're pretty cheap. In most Wargame Red Dragon matches, you will lose a few artillery pieces to artillery or to seed aircraft or suppression of enemy air defense aircraft. And it's great to get these guys out early on because they're pretty cheap. You can use them in great numbers. And if you lose one or two of them, it's not the end of the world, and you spare your more expensive vehicles for later on in the match. So we're going to grab that guy. And next up, we're going to be looking at the 2K22 Tunguska. Now, you've got two of them. You've got the Tunguska and Tunguska-M. Basically, the big difference is the missile systems that are out of it. So with the normal Tunguska, you have the 9M311, which has decent range against helicopters, but not the best against airplanes. And then the M gets the 311M version of the missile system, which boosts its range to 200 meters more against aircraft, and a 15% accuracy boost on that, which is insane. And this thing just sounds glorious on your headphones when it starts firing with those 30mm. And the nice thing about the Tunguskas as a whole is they're not, the missiles anyways, are not radar guided. So you can actually turn your AA guns off, which are radar guided or radar rounds, and just use the missiles if the enemy has seed. That's pretty fun. You can only get 4 of them out, but if you use them strategically, they can be a lifesaver. So I'm going to grab that. Next up, we're going to be looking at the Strela 10M. Strela 10M is a infrared missile system. It's got decent range against helicopters, decent range against airplanes, but same as the Beryusa, it's pretty cheap at 45 points 1. It's got a good accuracy and even better stabilizer than the Beryusa. So there is an argument to be made. You can take 2 cards of this, then the Beryusa, or you can take 2 cards of the Beryusa and not this. It's an either or situation, but I feel like having a little bit of variety of what vehicles for what purpose you have is good. The main reason why I'm suggesting this one is this is also not a radar guided system, which means it can stay on and active. You can keep your weapons on with this guy. Although it doesn't have the best range against planes, the enemy won't be able to take it out with seed if they don't know it's there, and then when a plane flies over, it can knock it out with the 12 infrared missiles it has. So it makes it a really good weapon for short to medium range against aircraft. So I definitely recommend going with that one. Next up, for long range defense, we'll be going with the Buck M1. It's got 2800 meter range against helicopters and 4550 meters against airplanes with a 65% accuracy. You can only get 4 of them, but they basically can one-shot planes if they want to on the day, and they're very effective. So I definitely recommend getting that, which means you have a decent assortment of anti-aircraft systems consisting from short to medium to medium to medium to long range and long-range systems. So that way you can have a multi-layered anti-aircraft network, which makes it almost impossible for the enemy to bring out aircraft, and that's one of the key points of victory is air superiority, is make sure your enemy doesn't have air superiority. And then last but not least, it wouldn't be a Skyquake video if I didn't recommend getting some artillery. So as you can see, you've got a bunch of artillery systems here. You've got the Melka, you've got the Pion, the Masta S, and all of the assortment of other cheap ones. So in this case, I would recommend one of two options. I would either go with the Msta-S or the Malka. The Malka is the 8-inch or 203mm round artillery piece. It's got a fantastic range of 42,000 meters with a dispersion of only 3,640 meters. So it's very accurate. It can only fire a couple of rounds, 3 rounds per minute, but it's an 8-inch shell, so that the shock wave that it inflicts and the damage that it inflicts can really do a lot of damage to enemy positions. So I definitely recommend either this one or even the Pion. You can get one more of them. Slightly worse range and dispersion, but basically the same effect with suppression and HE power. So that is an option, or the Msta-S. It's got 25,000 meters, which is not bad for a 152/155mm artillery piece, and it's got a dispersion of 4,550 meters, so same as the Pion. So it's slightly less in terms of range and dispersion. However, it is the 152, which means you can fire more rounds per salvo, so you can fire 5 rounds per minute. So it depends on how your playstyle is. The Msta-S loads a bit quicker, it's a little bit faster to maneuver, to shoot and scoot, and general purpose, it's a very good option. So for this, we're gonna go with the Msta-S. And that's what we have for the support deck. So let's hop over to the tank section. And now the tank. One of the things that the Russians are very famous and known for ever since World War II. So you've got literally everything from the T-34-85 to the T-80BV. Sorry, the T-AUM in terms of tanks. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I have done the T-34-85 meme of just spamming out T-34s. It's really funny and sometimes can actually work, but we're not going to be doing a meme deck today. So you've got the T-55s, T-62s, T-64s, T-72s, and T-80s, all in their different stages of development. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be going with the best tanks first, and then we'll be moving down as we go along. We're going to go with the T-80UM for your best tank. You can get 2 of them at 170 points. It's got 4 Invar style missiles and that 2A46M 125mm round cannon with 65% accuracy and 55% stabilizer and 23 AP power and 4 HE power for that main gun, which is insane. So it can really knock it. And it's got 21 front armor, which is very decent for your main big heavy tank. So we're going to grab 1 card of those, as you can only get 1 card unfortunately. After that, we're going to be going all the way down to the T-80BV. The T-80BV is slightly worse in a lot of the regards, but it's 110 points compared to 170. And you can get 7 of them, which is pretty nice. So we're going to get 2 of these actually, because the T-80s, I just love the look of these tanks. They're pretty cool. After that, now this is where your own taste in Russian tanks comes in and how your playstyle reacts to it. You can get any type of the plethora of T-72 big tanks, you know, play how you want. The thing that and this is where the strategic doctrine between USSR and Red 4 decks in general differ from NATO/Blue 4 decks, is that with NATO decks you want to tend to get, or Blue 4 decks I should say, you want to get as much of your high-tech equipment as you can in tanks out as much as possible, and have quality over quantity. That's one of the names of the games, because you can't match in terms of the Red 4 in numbers, so you need to get the best stuff to take out much stuff with what you have. Whilst the Russian and the USSR and Red 4 decks, you need to fight an attritional style of warfare. You won't be able to one-on-one match the technology or the equipment in all of the cases as you do with Blue 4 decks. So you need to be able to grind the enemy's defenses down, which is how the Russian doctrine is. It's based on. And this is where you need to really consider what you're going to go for. In my experience that I've gone for, and it's one of my decks that you probably saw in the Wargame Red Dragon video that I posted of that multiplayer match, I went with the T-72B. So it's a very decent tank. It's got 15 frontal armor, so it's basically in the range of a Leopard 2, Leopard 2A1-ish. It's got a very good gun, more comparable and better than the Leopard 2 or Leopard 2A1 at the 80 to 100 point range that you can get for that at 18 AP power. It's got the sphere cell missiles at 50% accuracy with 22 AP power, so it gives that extra long range capability. And that's the big thing about Russian vehicles that you need to use and exploit effectively. Their tanks have good range. You can really push up almost all the way in most maps, depending on, with the slight exception of one or two of the big maps. You can really push up. You don't really have to worry that much about fuel. You need to worry about ammo and repairs. That's your main thing. So these guys you can really use effectively. Russian tanks, you need to put in force lines, defensible areas, choke points wherever you can, and use that range advantage, because most of the Blue 4 vehicles, with obviously the exception of a few, don't have missile capability for their tanks. So that means you need to use that advantage. So, for example, T-72B and an M1A1 HA Abrams tank have the same range in guns, for example. However, the Abrams doesn't have a missile comparable system. So that's when you need to be able to know when to use attack and when to use defense. In defensive positions, although the T-72 is armorly wise not as good as Blue 4 counterparts, that missile is a force multiplier. So you can use these tanks and you can really lock down a position with them and take out a lot of tanks from long distance when they're doing tank pushes or tank charges. So we're going to go with the T-72B. And then after that, we're going to be looking at the T-62MV. Now you might be thinking, Sky, you've lost us. How is a T-62 going to be an effective weapon? And you're right, it doesn't have great frontal armors. It's not an armored tank that will be able to take hits, but you can get a lot of them. You can get 11 with the veteran skill, so we can get 2 tabs with those. That's 22 tanks that you got there. It's got an even better ranged missile system than the T-72B. To put that in perspective, at 60 points. So if you have flanks and you don't really want to spend too much money on really defending them, but you want to have your best bang for buck, the T-62MV is a very good option for that. It's got the cell missiles, it's got the decent 115, which can still pen 17 AP power, which is very good up until the Leopard 2A4 area. So that's really good. It's not a good stabilizer, but it has a good defensive capability. So that's why I'm getting this one. And the other thing as well is if you want to do pushes, the T-62MV is a good one for that, where if you want to do a little probing attack, not send in your best tanks first to get slaughtered, get the T-62MV, because that way, if they get taken, it's not the greatest loss, but you drained some of this ammo that the enemy has, and you know what they have, so you can either call in airstrikes or artillery on that position, or do a bigger tank push if you feel that that will punch for the enemy defense. So definitely look out for that. Next up, we've got the T-64B, and same kind of principle, once again, attritional style of warfare. With these you get 13, they've got the Cobra missile, not the best accuracy, but it's got a 30% stabilizer, so you can use them on the move. So the idea of this one, and its gun is not as well ranged as the T-62, but it does have that missile which you can fire on the move, which is a very important feature. So we're going to get 2 decks of these. The reason for this is, so for example, let's say you send in a couple T-62s, you find out where your enemy is, and you need to now push through. T-64s, you can bring even more of them out than the T-62. They're only 5 points more expensive, but if it's, for example, an open field and you need to target enemy tanks, you can fire off a couple of Cobra missiles long before they're in gun range, and you can soften up their defenses in conjunction with smoke and artillery that you can throw on the enemy as well. So definitely, so this is my loadout. A lot of people will disagree with me. Please let me know in the comments below what you would be rocking into a USS Armored deck for yourself. But I found that this is a good match. You've got the T-80BV, which is good range, good armor, and all of that. A mid-tier tank with the T-72 that you can still bring a decent amount of, and then your cheap tanks so you can kind of like soften up defenses. That's what I would recommend for young players to really get or new players or even medium moderate players that are pretty well versed in the game to try out and see how this style works. Next up, we've got Recon, and in Recon, there's not a lot of options here, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time. This video is going to be very long as it is, so we're not going to spend too much time. So, as with the US, you can do some cheeky-breaky stuff with the Razvedka, with the Mi-24D as a transport vehicle, so infantry behind enemy lines, get some recon on their base or their artillery, for example, which is a very effective strategy to use. So, if you like doing that kind of stuff and can micro well, that is an option, I would say. For this, however, we're going to be going with a bit more nuanced recon group. We're going to go with the T-55. It's a crappy tank, but it's got decent AP power and it's got decent optics. So we're gonna go, it's got good optics, so we're gonna go with that, and you can get 13 of them for 25 points, so it's definitely a good option to go if you're doing tank pushes. If you've got a ground vehicle that can move up and give you a little bit more eyesight on a tree line or something far away, definitely a nice thing to go with, and it can take a hit from soft vehicles at least. Next up, Mi-2, which is pretty decent. Plain basic recon helicopter, not anything too special there. It's just the workhorse of the Russian recon and transport aviation. So that is that for recon, honestly. You can specialize, you can go with the PD-85, which is amphibious, or BRM-1K, which is also amphibious. But for bang for buck and how many you can get on the map in a 40, 50, 60 minute game, T-55 Mi-2 will suit your needs very, very good. Next up, we're going to go to vehicles. In the vehicle tab, you don't really have too much to choose from. You've got your old Cold War style ASU-85Ms from the 1950s. You've got the Sturm S, which is actually a really, really nice vehicle to have in a defensive role. It's got 2,800 meter range with 12 Kokon missiles, 55% accuracy, and 20 AP power. So these guys are really, really fun, and this is one of the options I would definitely say I would recommend you getting. It's really, really good. Once again, same on the par with the T-62s in the tank tab, where it's a cheap price, but you can lock down a position or a command point very effectively with a few of these. Next up, you've got your Su-122s, which is basically upgraded Su-122 from the Second World War. You've got the 2S-15 Norov, which is like a light tank, amphibious tank. It's got a 100mm gun, which has decent AP power, so these are pretty fun to use. I'm definitely not against them, and for 35 points they're very cheap, so you can really hold up a not so important point effectively with these guys, or do a cheap push that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Then, of course, you've got the BMP-T, which is like the predecessor to the Terminator that we will all come to know. It's got the 30mm frag rounds, 100mm rounds, 30mm cannon. So basically a BMP-free, but with more armor, with the armor of a T-72. So it's a pretty fun vehicle, I'm not gonna lie. I would definitely recommend this vehicle to take it. It's really fun to play with, and if you use them right, you can cause havoc in enemy lines with these guys. But for the purpose of this video, we're actually going to go with an unsung here, which is the ZSU-23-4 Afghansky. It's a 20 points short range AA vehicle. Now you might say, Sky, you're going off the wires here. How are you not taking a BMP-T but you're taking an Afghansky? There's very good reason for this. The Afghansky is very, very good against short range stuff, for example, helicopters, and even infantry. Like this thing, the quad 23mm guns just shred infantry instantly. So they're very good in defensive roles, or even to take with the T-62s if you don't want to sacrifice an expensive system to protect your pushes. These guys are great. You can bring out a couple of them, and if they die, it's 20, 40, 60 points. It's not going to be too much to replace. They are stabilized, which is a very good thing, so you can fire on the move, so you can fire on airplanes, helicopters, and ground on the move. And I've used them in many, many instances very effectively for that, as well as for base defense. It's going to be a factor where if you're going to be playing against a game where you have players that do flanking maneuvers, stuff like that, they will probably try to get recon infantry or recon helicopters, or just do heli rushes or helicopter rushes behind your lines. These guys can shred them pretty easily, and it's not going to cost you an arm or leg, and you don't have to sacrifice one of your expensive, valuable support units for that role. So we're going to get 20 a train for 18, and we're going to grab that. I'm not going to grab any other vehicles because we want to save those points for the helicopter and the aircraft tab, which we will now be going into. Right, for the helicopter tab, it's pretty simple. You've got the MI Force, which is basically the school bus. It's got very, very basic, I would say, weapons. 1960s era weapons, not really too effective on a modern battlefield. So they're fun if you want to do a lot of them, but they're individually not very great. For effectiveness wise, you can get either the Mi-24P or the Mi-24VP. The difference is basically the Kokon -M Sackloss missile that you get, or the basic Kokon. So it's just AP power wise what you want to get there. For 10 points more, we're actually going to go with the Mi-24VP because you want to get that extra accuracy and range and AP power. Okay, in this case it's the same, but the same AP power, better AP power, and take out those big heavy tanks as much as you possibly can. And they're very good multi-purpose, so you can use them for flanking maneuvers, you can use them to attack behind enemy lines, or use them as a force multiplier against tank pushes if they punch through your first line of defense. A couple of these will make short work of any blue 4 or red 4 tanks that might be pushing you. So we're going to grab that. We're going to grab one card of those only, and we'll see if we get back, we get more points that we can use, then we'll come back. But we want to use the last 15 points if we can for the air tab. So onto the air tab. The Russians are very known for their aircraft, and they're really fun to play with. I quite like them in Wargame Red Dragon as well. So you've got your plethora of vehicles here. We're not going to go through each one of them, but we're going to go with the ones that we're going to be choosing for basicness that you would use for most USSR armored decks. So let's go with air superiority first off. So air superiority, Su-27S, definitely the go-to. You get the Su-27PU, which is a bit more expensive. You get 2 of them as well. You get 6 Vimpels, which have better the same accuracy actually, but it has worse range than the Su-27S, which has 8,400 meters. And for dogfighting, air range for your missiles is very, very important. So that extra 700 meters that you get can really define whether you lose a plane or you take out a plane, or take out 2 planes for that matter. So I'm going to go with the Su-27S. It's a very, very good price, and it's a very good plane overall. Next up, this is where the choices and your personal playstyle comes in. You can either go for seed or frog food, or you can go both and maybe take out one of the other bomber types that you might get. But for this case, we're going to go with seed. The Russians have a very good one with the Su-24. It's got 2 anti-radar missiles at 4,500 meter range. For 80 points, that's very, very good price, very cheap, so we're going to grab that. You do get the MiG-25BM, which is very good. It has a range of 550 meters with such a good accuracy, and save large is not even funny. And you get 4 missiles. However, you only get one of the planes itself. So if you lose this plane, it's gone. You don't have sea capabilities. So in aircraft, it's always nice to have a little bit of redundancy. If you lose a plane, or you need to sacrifice a plane for a specific thing in order to change the outcome of battle, get that redundancy there. Get an extra plane. It's worth it. The veterancy, although nice, it's better to have more planes than the veterancy, because veterancy can always boost up. Next up, we're going to go with an AOE or HE bomber, and we're going to go with the Su-24M. I love this plane. It's a really, really good looking plane. It's got 30 250 kilogram bombs, so that's about 7,500 kilograms worth of bombs if you're doing the quick math on that. And it just wrecks an entire village completely. Like infantry or soft skin vehicles, you just drop it on them and there is no what village, what infantry basically. So we're gonna grab that, and then we've got 9 points left, so that means we can actually get both of these slots. Perfect. It's as if I have been doing this before. So next up, we're gonna go with a frogfoot, because the frogfoot is just awesome. It's got 16 Vickers SAL missiles with 3150 meter range. Now, with the frogfoot, you do need to look after it. It's like a puppy. You need to make sure it doesn't run out of the yard. It doesn't get gung ho, because if it sees a target, it will go for it and try and kill it. And AA does love to target this thing because it's such a big threat. So use these sparingly, more to the end of the match if you know the enemy doesn't have long range AA. Because if it's short range AA or not very accurate AA, you can even bring it in that circumstance. Because it is a tank on. It's basically the Russian A10 if you're not familiar with the Frogfoot. So definitely, it's always a fun vehicle to bring out. It's expensive, so definitely look after it. And then with our last 5 points, we're going to be going for an Heat and Cluster Bomber. So we do have the 25T, which is for ground attack purposes, take out tanks and stuff like that. But if you need to take out a forest line where you can't see the vehicles, then we're going to go with the MiG-29M. It's got 4 500 kilogram heat and cluster bombs. It's very, very good range actually in terms of like where it can drop it, and it's got decent air detection, ECM, that kind of stuff. So your chances of it getting out is pretty decent. So we're gonna be grabbing that, and that is our air lineup. So let's quickly go back to the main screen and just have a quick look at all of the things. So you get 21 logistic units in total, 63 infantry, 28 support, 80 tank units, 20 recon units, 18 vehicle units, 7 helicopter units, and 10 planes. So this is my USS Armored deck in a nutshell for beginners or people that want to learn how to make a good USSR deck. As I said, the main key points and aspects of Russian or USSR's Red 4 decks in general is you need to fight an attritional style of warfare. What does that mean? You're not going to be punching in with your top best tank. You need to grind your enemies down, let their defenses weaken, and then punch through. Do repeated soft attacks, do some flanking maneuvers, stuff like that, and then go through. Because pound for pound, the T80UM is not the best armored tank comparatively to the Blue 4 tanks that you can get for super heavy tanks. So you want to really like soften your enemy defenses, use your artillery to great effect, take out the enemy's aircraft, and neutralize their air corridor as much as possible, which allows you to use your artillery and your aircraft to great effect to soften targets and to punch holes in the enemy defense, and then you can start streaming through and take them out one by one. So I hope this tutorial video was informative for you guys and that you enjoyed it. If you would like to have a specific country, check next. Next up we're going to be doing another Blue 4 nation, but if you have a specific request, please let me down in the comments. Let me know in the comments down below. And what do you think of my deck? Do you like it? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? I would love to hear your input on it. And but for this video, that is all. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe down below. It really helps our channel out a lot. We're on the road to 100 subscribers, and then we'll take it from there. I also have a Patreon account where we're doing exclusive content, and where I'm also posting a bunch of my unreleased videos and recordings of gameplay that we're doing, and just having a bunch of great fun. And if you want to join our Discord, as you join the Patreon, you'll get access to the Discord link as well. But for this video, that is all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.